So, hello everyone. Today, I will be doing a dramatic reading of Wendola Jamjar's backstory. Now, Wendola Jamjar is the character that I play on a livestream D&D 5e campaign run on twitch.tv/ScryerVision. She is a Halfling Knowledge Domain cleric, currently with just a little bit of Warlock, but at the time of this backstory, no Warlock. And so, because most of her backstory came out in the last episode, I said that I would do a dramatic reading of the entirety of her 6 pages of backstory today. So that is what we are here for. I don't have her character art up because it was actually commissioned and done by the wonderful artist Keeves. And you can find their Twitter at, let's see if I can find the thing. You can find their Twitter at KEEVESES, and you can see that art every week on our live stream, 7:30 Central Standard Time on Wednesdays. But this is Wendola's backstory. So, here we go. In the deep of night, an infant, lying amidst a threadbare blanket nestled inside a magically floating wagon, was gently placed in an alcove, candles lit in reverence to Agma, the only light in the quiet temple. As the child slept, Mother Superior Mirmala felt an unknown pull to the sanctuary, where she heard the outer door close as she spotted the floating wagon. Wendola Jamjar's earliest memory does not involve a doting mother tending to her needs, nor a sibling stealing a favored possession. Her earliest memory sees a child looking for fun, for interaction, for affection, and being redirected to a stack of books she could not yet read, books that included only 2 with pictures. She sat down dejectedly and grabbed a book at random, pudgy fingers dragging across symbols that could not yet be made into word. Wendola was 3 years old. Wendola spent many days, weeks, months reading without understanding. Finally, a priestess new to the order took pity on her, recognizing the desire to be like those she spent all day underfoot, and taught Wendola to read. And she did not stop reading from that day forward. Wendola devoured every book in the temple several times over, until one fateful day. Wendola was sitting in her favorite high-backed, cushy red chair, reading a book she had only read twice before, when a shadow moving across the floor caught her attention. "Who's there?" she called out, not really expecting an answer, as priestesses were constantly walking through. But that day, a scraggly dressed goblin peeked her head out from behind a nearby bookcase. "I'm Gree. Who are you?" Wendola answered with her name, asking, "What are you doing here?" "I was bored at the children's home, and Timmy was being mean, so I left." Wendola and Gree became quick friends. And when Wendola learned Gree couldn't read, she found her first project, a lifelong love of helping people learn and sharing her own knowledge. Wendola spent nearly 3 months with her new friend, teaching Gree to read, and Gree showing her that there might be slightly more to life than only reading. One day, Wendola sat in her chair, only half paying attention to the book in her hand, waiting for her friend to arrive. Her waiting, though, was in vain. As the hours waned into darkness, and Wendola finished her book for the 4th time, it occurred to her that Gree wasn't coming. As a feeling welled up inside her that she had several years of practice suppressing, she decided to venture out to the children's home the next day to find out why her friend had abandoned her. It took her most of the day to find the home, but when she did, Wendola spotted Gree. Her friend, hair normally wild, clothes unkempt and torn, looked completely different. Gree's hair was combed and shiny, clothes mended and washed, and in a first, she was wearing shoes. Wendola almost didn't recognize her, but as she came upon a carriage parked in front of the home, Gree called out to her, "Wendola, I can't believe you came. How did you even know you should? I got adopted. I have parents now." Gree threw herself at Wendola, wrapping her arms around Wendola's waist. "Promise you won't forget about me?" Wendola was quiet for a long time before finally responding, Of course not." She patted Gree on the head, extracted herself, and turned around to leave. She was only a couple of steps down the street before she looked over her shoulder. "I wish you happiness with your new family." She saw Gree looking at her confusedly, with slightly watery eyes, but paid the emotion no mind as she made her way back to the temple, found a book she had read countless times before, and settled into her chair. She only read for a few moments before slumping over in sleep, only partially brought on because the words were too blurry to read. As the book slipped from her hands, the arm on her chair grew damp. Wendola was 8 years old. Several years later, Wendola was reading, yet again, a book she had read multiple times over. Darkness was falling, and as she absent-mindedly reached to light a lamp, the room suddenly glowed with a radiant light, brighter than a lamp should be. Wendola was too engrossed in her book to even notice the oddity, but a priestess working in another section saw the telltale signs of light being cast, and quickly made her way to Mother Superior Mirmala. "It finally happened. Wendola has manifested her gifts." "Thank you for telling me," was the response, "but I fear she has outgrown what we can teach her here. You know she has read everything we have available. I think it is time we send her to the academy." The priestess nodded and walked with Mirmala to the library. As they made their way to Wendola and loomed over her for more time than they would have liked, she finally noticed them 5 minutes later. "Mother Superior Mirmala, what brings you to my chair? I feel like you'd never talk to me anymore." Mirmala's mouth lifted to a half smile. "Did you see this?" Indicating the lamp, clearly still glowing with a radiant light. "See what? The lamp that I turned on?" Wendell looked closer at the lamp, seemingly for the first time. "How? That doesn't look normal. Why is it so bright and not flickering?" Mirmala's smile reached her eyes as she explained, "Wendola, you did this. We knew you were destined for something. It's not every day a child is left in our sanctuary in a floating wagon." She nods at the object that has a faint magical tether looped around the chair, leading to the young halfling. "And that day has finally come. We think it is time for you to go and leave us for the bigger library at the academy. They can teach you more than we ever could. And maybe you'll even make some friends your own age." Wendola sat in quiet contemplation before a wry smile spread across her face. "Can't wait to get rid of me, eh? Too much underfoot?" She squeezed her eyes closed, her mouth opening and closing a couple more times, as though she had more to say, but couldn't find the words. The next couple of months were a flurry of activity, as Wendola and the Mother Superior worked at a frenzied pace to secure her a place at the academy. Not a small feat for one seemingly blessed with power instead of learned. Wendola, though, impressed with the sheer amount of material she had read and retained, and managed to secure a seat in the fall semester. Wendola was 12 years old. On a busy morning, the solitary halfling, arms full with meager belongings, way and trailing behind her, made her way to the academy. Eager to start her new adventure, Wendola pulled the sheet of paper given to her by the Mother Superior, carefully studying the instructions and map leading to the new student orientation. "First stop, Griselda Highmelder boarding house," she said to herself uncertainly. "You're headed to old Grizzy too?" Wendola looked up, and up, and up to a 7-foot-tall furbolg, one that looked about as lost as she felt. It's my first day, too. Wendola gave her a confused look. Hey, none of that. It's all over your face. Want to walk to the dorms with me? I'm Yaslana, by the way. Who are you? Yes, please, let's walk. Wendola introduced herself, but that was about all she was able to get out before her new acquaintance started up again. I'm so excited to start here. I mostly have druidic magic, so it'd be nice to learn more arcane styles. Yaslana talked about herself the entire rest of the way to the boarding house, nearly 20 minutes. But that was just fine with Wendola, who listened, mostly, and definitely wasn't distracted by the intricate designs on her new friend's long green cloak. When they finally reached the building, Wendola was surprised when Yaslana grabbed her hand and pointed toward a large piece of paper posted on the outside of the building. I bet that's the roommate listing. Let's check it out. She pulled Wendola towards it and quickly scanned down the list. At last, her eyes lit up. How lucky! We're assigned to be roommates. What a crazy coincidence! Wendola let out a half smile. Yes, that will be great. Though Yaslana didn't seem to notice her reluctance. Wendola found herself being led through the next few days of orientation in a whirlwind of activities, dragged by Yaslana to every new student program and exercise the school offered, from flying kites to tie-dyeing clothes, barbecues to potlucks. Wendola had never seen so many people her own age, ever. She settled into her small room, never time to be alone with her thoughts, which was new, and only slightly unwelcome as she tried to throw herself into her studies, learning more and more every day. After the first month of new student activities waned, Wendola dove deeper and deeper into learning about the arcane, as her roommate struggled, reconciling her druidic nature with the more intellectual magic taught. Wendola was feeling a long, dormant emotion, but something nagged at her, as the invites from Yaslana for the different activities dwindled, while Wendola threw herself into her classes. She definitely did not notice her friend. Yes, that's what she is. Failing classes, withdrawing from social interests, hiding out in their shared room. Wendola had discovered the library early during her time at the academy, and on this particular day had spent all time between and after classes there, studying class materials and memorizing the non-fiction layout. By the time she finally made it back to her room, it was nearly dark. As she illuminated the wall sconce with a quick flick of her wrist, Wendola was surprised to discover that half of the room was empty. What? As she scanned the room, she found a note carefully placed on her desk. Wendola, thank you for being my friend. This school wasn't what I thought it would be. I'm going home. I'll be able to learn much more from my family than I could ever learn here. Yaslana. As Wendola read the note again, she couldn't figure out why she got a weird feeling in the pit of her stomach. Going home. Family. Wendola was 14 years old. It was a fairly typical day for a nearly grown-up Wendola. She went to class, first row, notebook at the ready, with a fresh writing utensil next to it. After the professor walked in, a very studious-looking gnome followed minutes later. Wenda subconsciously rolled her eyes at the girl's entrance and let out the minutest of sighs. What's the matter, Wend? The girl, 1 year Wendola senior, feigned concern for her chief rival for class valedictorian. Not feeling well today? Wendola rolled her eyes, a little more overtly this time. I'm fine, Orla. Sarcasm dripping from every word. Well enough to get to class on time, at least. Orla tutted. Class hasn't even started yet, and I have better things to do with my time than wait in an uncomfortable chair for a boring history of chronomancy lecture to start. Wendola just shook her head and stopped engaging with the girl that had battled her for several years to rank number 1 in the class. She's not worth it, Wendola repeated over and over, a common mantra that Wendola used to make sure she didn't bop Orla on the nose, an error she was determined to only make once. In between classes, Wendola made her way to her favorite spot in the library, a secluded alcove with several cushy beanbag-filled chairs, bean-filled bags, and a radiator that stopped clanking with only the slightest of provocation. As she made her way, she spotted the closest thing she had to a friend, a gnomish boy with very similar facial features to a certain rival. Wendola nodded silently to the gnome, with a slight smile and eye roll as well. She knew Orin would catch that she had had another fun encounter with his sister, one that they didn't even need to discuss, as their shared experience with the abrasive girl spanned nearly their entire friendship. Wendola pulled out her chronomancy textbook, curled up in her favorite beanbag, smacked the radiator, and began studying. The rest of Wendola's year went similarly, in a blur of classes, reading in the library, or holing away in her single room, a privilege she had finangled early in her academic career with her stellar grades and willingness to work on campus. Not that she found her job to be too much of a bother. After all, she spent 95% of her free time in the library, and the work they had her doing, organizing and restocking shelves, she would do anyway. It was finally the last day of class, the final, and Wendola had spent the last 2 weeks ferociously cramming all the knowledge she could in her brain. This test would determine which of the highly competitive girls would be valedictorian, Orla or Wendola. Wendola was scribbling furiously on the final essay when Orla walked by, scroll in hand, knocked twice on her desk. "Good luck, Wend. Hopefully you got the help you needed from Ogma." The disdain in her voice was impossible to disguise, even if Orla was trying. Wendola glanced over to the TA proctoring the exam, who was busy studying for their own exam, and steeled herself with several deep breaths, and carefully finished the final sentences of her essay. She quickly scanned her work, ignoring the slightly glowing passage midway through the page, rolled the scroll, and turned it in. Wendola quickly hurried out of the room, looked left and right before running down the hallway toward Orla. "Good luck to you, Orla. May the best one win." Wendola quickly turned on her heel, imperceptibly shaking her head. That was so dumb," she thought to herself, "but at least I'll never have to talk to her again after the graduation ceremony." A week later, final ranking came out. Wendola had gotten 97% on that final, while Orla had only gotten a 95, which put Wendola at the top of her graduating class, 1 year ahead of schedule. Wendola was 21 years old. The next several years were largely similar to the previous 7, without the ever-looming threat of failing from the class rankings, but did involve copious amounts of audited classes, and then starting on the professor track at the academy. Wendola made several acquaintances, including a similarly intellectually inclined artificer, though most flitted in and out of her life as all relationships in her experience had. One in particular, an elven wizard that led the teacher training program named Ifir Finala, pushed her towards her current path. "You do not have the experience to train the newest crop of wizards in training, especially considering..." Ifir trailed off. "Considering what?" Wendola could barely contain the irate tone that snuck through. "I was first in my class. I've been here learning everything I can. I even participated in the monster tournament that you said would give me experience. For longer than just about anyone." Ifir let out a wry smile. "Considering the source of your power, child, how can you teach a wizard when you don't understand their power?" "I don't understand power?" Wendola suggested a rat she knew was in the wall come out to her hand, where she caused it to glow with a radiant light. That is, until she summoned a bell to ring as she told the dead, causing the rat to slump over. She then quickly rummaged through her books to find a good healing word, and the rat awoke with a start and ran back to the wall from whence it came. Wendola returned the wry smile. "I'll have that experience sooner than you think. Just you watch." It was not long after this that Wendola was recruited for her favorite program, Scryer Vision. She knew her school apparel would not be appropriate for a life of adventure, and if her hero, Zephrana Deep Hollow, had taught her anything, it was the items necessary. A shirt and skirt with many pockets, an adventurer's hat and walking stick, and sturdy boots. She made her way to the nearest adventurer shop and got brand new everything, as top of the line as her meager teacher and training salary could afford. And so Wendola started off, shield and mace, crossbow, and her puzzle cube holy symbol in hand, her wondrous wagon trailing faithfully behind, dressed to the nines in sparkling clean adventure clothes, no idea of the things that await her in her search for experience. Wendola is 28 years old. And that is Wendola's backstory. I hope everyone enjoyed hearing that as at least as much as I hope you enjoyed it as much as I cringed internally reading it, because wow, it's interesting reading something that you've written out loud. I will say that much right now. Anyways, I'm going to stop the recording now, but the stream will continue on, so if you'd like to continue watching me, come to my stream at twitch.tv/Brayna and watch me do all sorts of fun stuff, like play World of Warcraft and Diablo on Monday through Friday, and then D&D prep on Saturdays. Thanks for watching.